Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Erb and Young. Real conversations about business, leadership, and personal development. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I think that's from the Truman Show. But anyway, welcome back to the Be Extraordinary podcast. I am solo today. This is Brett Young with Erb and Young, and I do not have my partners in crime, Mr. Rod Erb and Taylor Young. And so this is a first for me, which will be really fun. And so Lorenzo, those of you that know inside of our organization, Lorenzo is our CEO of content. Total stud. We need to get him on the podcast, by the way. So we need to get you on the podcast, by the way. We'll do an interview. Total. I mean, you guys would be blown away by this dude. So everything you hear and see and what we do is really a result of just the incredible hard work and creativity that Zoe does. And so I was like, all right, man, well, let's just rip it you today. And I said, man, I don't know if I can do that. I've never done that before. So we talk about success, about getting out of your comfort zone, and this is definitely out of my comfort zone. So it'll be fun to rip with you today. So, and I was asking, what would we talk about? And I was like, man, I want to do something that's genuine to me if I'm going to be by myself. And what immediately came to mind was defining moments. And I want to share with you guys a story today that will hopefully inspire you and maybe give some context for those of you that are early on your journey that could help you. And but there are these moments in our life, in our career, that become these defining moments for where we're going to end up. And the challenge is, if we knew when those defining moments were going to come, it would be very easy for us to maybe, put the stakes in the ground and say, I got to make sure I don't miss this. If only we had a time machine, it would be a lot easier, but we don't. And so we don't know when these things are going to show up for us. But when they show up, they become these magical, powerful moments that we look back and say, man, that defined me. That was a fork in the road, and that decision made all the difference in the world. And a very successful person gave me a really cool quote that I put on the top of my goals every year. It says that a successful life is made up of good choices. They're good decisions in life usually lead us to good actions, which lead to good results, which lead to a positive life. And so we don't know when these are going to happen, but they usually come packaged in a gift wrap that is not that is something of pain, of discomfort, and challenge. And I want to share one of the moments for me. I've had a couple of those moments in my career, and I know that there will be a lot more in the future that come. But this one in particular I wanted to share with you today because it completely changed my business. It completely changed my life. It changed my career. I was in a place where, for those of you that know my background and some of our background, I was in the network marketing space for 5 years. And I did it at a pretty high level in the last maybe 2.5 years of that. But there was a point in which a little right before that I was struggling significantly. I was just getting out of college. I knew that I had met some really good people, but the network marketing space is a very difficult place. I mean, it's got taboo all written all over it. You're usually unpolished. I was a young kid that didn't have a lot of skills. It was a low price point. I was young in my journey of development, and I'm just getting out of school. And at this point, you've got bills to pay. I've got a fiance at the time that I definitely wasn't able to support. She was supporting me, and there's just all this pressure that all of a sudden life starts to throw on you. And I was living in this comfort zone of, I was in college. I didn't have to make the money that I needed to live, but then becomes all these different bills that come at you, and man, the game changed. And there was a lot of voices inside of my head and outside pressures that said, man, I don't know if I can continue to do this. I don't know if this is going to make sense. I might have to go get a job. I might have to go give up this entrepreneurial journey and do what my parents candidly wanted me to do. So I had a lot of pressure from home that, I was not, going down the path that they had wanted me to. And they were very supportive and supporting me, but made it very clear that they weren't happy with the choices that I was making as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. That I had a college degree. I came from a pretty pedigreed family. I could have gotten some really good gigs, and I was choosing to do this thing where I wasn't making a lot of money, and that would potentially lead me to a place where I wasn't going to get to where my aspirations were. So there was all these external forces that were pushing me down, and during that time I was running with Rod, and we were like, we're still best friends to this day, but man, we worked out every day. I mean, we worked on our business every single day. But there was a moment in time, keep in mind, he had a big career. So this was a side gig for me, and it was full-time for me. And there was a moment in our career that, he had to kind of take a sabbatical, and he stepped away from the business. Well, it's funny how this works, because he stepped away from the business at the exact moment that I was getting out of school and had all this pressure from the normal life. And so I was kind of in this bubble. I got mentored by this dude who I just had tremendous amount of respect for, still do. Met all these incredible mentors, learned all this stuff conceptually. Then I go out into the real world, and now I'm faced with all of these challenges and forces and pressure. And oh, by the way, Rod takes a step away from the business. And so I'm by myself now. And all of you who know going to the gym with a workout partner, it's a lot easier to go to the gym. But if you're just going with you, what ends up happening? Life gets in the way and you make excuses. It's easy to let ourselves down in the process. It's very difficult to let other people down. So having a workout partner is just instrumental to any type of success, because you're much more willing to go through toughness and challenge if it's for other people than if it's for you. And so this was happening, and I found myself with all this additional pressure and not my workout partner. And so at this point in time, we had gone to 2 conferences a year. We never missed. We went without fail. We went for, 4 or 5 days at a time. It was Las Vegas, Oklahoma City. And Vegas is fun, right? Because Vegas, you go out and you blow it out and have a blast. And it's like you can justify that trip all day long. But it just so happens that during this time, with all this additional pressure, not being able to pay the bills that I'm responsible for within my household. My wife's taking care of me at this point. I'm getting out of school. I've got this degree. My parents are looking at me like, what is this kid doing? My business partner and workout partner and support system, in essence, my mentor at the time, which was Rodney Erb, steps away from the business because life happens. And I'm sitting in this place with all these excuses. I'm sitting in this place where I said, man, I have every justification to say I'm going to take a break. Hey, I'm just going to go get a gig, and I'll pick this back up later. And it just so happens that Oklahoma City, which was the conference, was the next conference. And it was in like 2 weeks. And I'm thinking to myself, number one, this isn't Vegas. This is Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City, shout out to everybody who lives in Oklahoma City. It's a great city, but it's definitely not Vegas as far as entertainment is concerned, as you can imagine. And I don't have a person to go with. I don't have someone to room with. I've never gone to a conference like that outside of my backyard, being, the 22-year-old kid that I was. I'd always gone with my best friend and mentor. So it was extremely uncomfortable for me. And if I'm being honest, I didn't want to go. And I was making a lot of excuses on why I shouldn't go. And at the time, the gentleman that I was working with, who I consider one of the most premier mentors in my life, Mr. John Drennan, had just a dramatic impact on my life. And he would always say these things to me that would rock you to the core. And I started telling him that I wasn't going to go, and here's why, and this. And he said, well, do you want to be successful? And I said, well, of course I'm going to be successful. I want to be successful. And he goes, well, what do successful people do? And it was a pause, and I looked at him and I said, well, successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. And he goes, exactly. So what do you think the right decision would be here? And back of my mind, I'm thinking, man, I know what the answer is, but I don't like the answer. But I wasn't going to let down somebody who had poured so much into me. And I also knew that I genuinely believed in these philosophies, these success philosophies, because I had seen them play out in so many people's lives that I had worked with. And so, of course, said successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do, John. I will be there. I will figure it out. And he said, good. Well, I know you will. And it was such a pivotal moment for me because I had no idea how to get there. I had probably $100 in my bank account. Didn't know anybody to go with. But what I know now, being in the position where I am today, is I believe that it was even more instrumental and an even bigger deal for John, knowing my situation, to put enough pressure on me to make the decision that I did. Now, some people say, well, that's inconsiderate for somebody not to think about your situation and say, well, how could you put a young kid in a situation like that to where he feels guilty if he doesn't go? You're using guilt. And it wasn't guilt. It just depends on your perspective of how you believe. He knew that decision would make me a better person. He knew that making that decision would get me to what I said I wanted. I had worked with him for almost 3 years now, and I told him every day what I wanted, and I was willing to do whatever it took. But when the rubber met the road, and he had the opportunity to let me off the hook because it was uncomfortable, because it would be unreasonable to let this person go into a situation where they can't make their ends meet to get there, he said absolutely not, because his belief was so high that he knew without a shadow of a doubt that if I figured out a way to be there, what it would make me in the process. And so I think about that all the time now from a leadership perspective, but I didn't have that context then. I'm just thinking at it from my perspective. But now looking back, I think it was even more bold, even more courageous, even more amazing that someone would put enough pressure on a young kid because they believed with all of their heart that it would make them a better person, a better man, a better businessman. So that was a lesson right there. But so anyway, I make the decision to go. Now I have no idea how to go. I have no idea how to make it. I don't have any money. I don't have a ticket. I think the ticket was $400 or $500. I don't have a ride. I can't afford a plane flight. I don't have a roommate. And keep in mind, I have $100 in my bank account. But I made a decision, and that was another clue for me. It says I didn't have to figure out how to do it first before I made the decision. No, you make the decision first, and then you figure it out afterwards. That's a clue. Success leaves clue, and that's a clue. Make the decision on what you want, and then you'll figure it out. If you wait until you have to have it all figured out and it has to make logical sense, well, then you'll never do anything that's worth a damn. And so I made a decision, and I did that. And so I went to a meeting that next week. Keep in mind that the conference was now in 4 or 5 days. And I met a gentleman, and I told him about my situation, and I said, man, I'm going. I just don't know how I'm getting there yet. And he said, well, man, I'm going with 5 other, I think it was 6, is it 5 other people? 5, 6 other people. It was 5 other people. And he said, I don't have any space. He goes, but man, I know how important these conferences are, and I can hear it in your voice. I mean, we have a minivan, and you could always come in, and get in the back and drive there with us in the back. I don't know how you get home, but I bet you could meet somebody. You're more than welcome to if you want to. Now, he said this almost to me flippantly, because who's going to get into the back, basically the trunk of a minivan, and drive 16 hours across the country to go to a conference that you can't afford a ticket, you can't afford a room, and it's with people that you've never met? And so I go home that night and I say, man, thanks, I appreciate that. And I think about it. And I said, man, I don't know if that's going to work. I still don't have a ticket. Well, lo and behold, John Drennan gets me a ticket. He calls me and says, hey, by the way, somebody canceled. I've got a ticket. It's yours if you want it. Helps me. He another lesson, right? Like leadership, he bridged the gap for me. He didn't remove all the barriers, but he made it easier for me to make a better decision. And I said, man, so hold on a second. I've got a ticket. I have a ride, which is unbelievable to even think that that's even a possibility, but it's possible. It's not ideal, but it's possible. I said, I just don't have space in the hotel room. So I call the gentleman. His name is Kevin. And I said, hey, this all works. I got a ticket. I just don't have a room. He said, dude, it's not a big deal. We have a suite. If you want to sleep on the floor, you could sleep on the floor. I don't care. And I said, you know what, Kevin? I'll do it. So I want to back up for a second because, yes, that is accurate. So here I've got a ticket. I've got a ride. And now I have a space to sleep, which if you call that a space to sleep. And I've got $100 in my bank account, and that's enough for food and all that stuff, and we'll figure it out. Bottom line is I end up going. as super uncomfortable as that was, I end up going. And I ride in the back of this minivan for 16 hours by myself with these 5 guys, which was awesome. We had an incredible conversation the whole time. It was amazing that they let me do that. And by the way, not the most safest thing, but I didn't have any children at the time, so we'll say that preface. So I ride 16 hours this conference, and it completely rocks my world. 3 days, I've never taken more notes in my entire life. Do you know what note-taking looks like when you're there with every single ounce of everything you have? There's a difference between going to a conference when you're fat and happy and it's nice to be there. There's a difference when you're going to a conference because it has to save your life. You just take notes a different way. You just pay attention a different way. You just have a different fire about you, about as far as making sure that you get the absolute most out of it. Because if we don't pay a price for something, it's not worth anything. And the price that I had to pay to get there was ridiculous. So the level of engagement that I had was just at a different level. So I take all these notes, sleep on the floor, meet a bunch of people, have an amazing conference, and something incredible happens. It would have been fine in and of itself because it showed me so many lessons, some of the ones that I've just named, but it also showed me that anything is possible if we make a decision and we go. And I felt like I was the creator of my life instead of a victim of my circumstances. But it also, so the price that I had to pay to do that, I was extracting so much good, rich content that I was going to take back, and we still use that today in this business. The entire fundamentals of Urban Young is based in these stories that I'm telling you right now. Everything: recruiting, hiring, training, develop talent, culture, leading a voluntary army, sales, marketing, everything, okay? But that wasn't what really happened. That's not what changed my life. That's not what changed what happened to me. So when I got there, these guys knew somebody, and he was an older gentleman. This was a third career for him, and he was in the automotive business. He was a very successful dude. He was probably, late 60s. Now, I'm 22. Now, I just gravitated this guy because I kept asking him a lot of questions, and he had a lot of knowledge, and he had a lot of experience, and you could tell he was successful in whatever he did in his past life. So I started asking a lot of questions. Anyway, we totally hit it off. And we end up, I'm just grilling him every night, asking questions. And he was so humble and amazing to give me all these cool answers and life experience. And now it's time to go home. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to be in the back of this minivan again. And he's like, hey, look, I had somebody that rode with me. I'm riding back. I'm probably an hour from where you need to be dropped off. If you want to ride with me, you're more than happy to. So I said, absolutely, not be in the back of this van. That would be incredible. I would love to do that. That'd be fantastic. So I end up getting a ride with him and find out that he worked directly with Zig Ziglar for over a decade. Like he was like his number 2, number 3 guy. Worked with him on a considerable basis in the automotive business because Zig was really big in the automotive business. So I want to set the stage here for you. So imagine a 16-hour car ride with a guy who is trained under one of the best sales coaches in the history of sales, period, and having one-on-one attention for that duration of time. So guess what we did? We role-played sales for 16 hours. He taught me more in that time period than I have ever learned about the craftsmanship of sales and transfer of belief and closing and asking good questions. You can't. The conference was incredible because I left with probably 80 pages of notes for 3 days. And that was enough in itself. And if you took 80 pages of those notes, if you multiplied them by 1,000, it wouldn't even come close to the dramatic impact that I received on that ride home. By the way, that ride home, that would have never happened if I hadn't have made a decision, taken a leap of faith, and then followed through on something. And so we get to the end of our trip, and we say our goodbyes. I thank him, obviously, up and down. And I never saw him again. I never saw that gentleman ever again. He ended up moving. And it's one of those moments in time where, I met somebody extremely influential. They came into my life and then they left. But the value that was gained during that time is something that has shaped everything Everything that I have been able to experience from a business perspective, it stems from that experience. And it's so funny how these moments in time that seem difficult and challenging and tough and hard present themselves in these awful packages that you're like, why is this happening to me at this moment? Like, why does it have to be so difficult? Why is it pushing me away from what I perceive that I want? I wanted to build this business, but yet all these forces are trying to push me into the other direction. So when do we listen to him and when do we not? But that one wasn't just because life was saying, hey, you have to take care of somebody else, so you need to make a different decision. No, this was just, it was uncomfortable for me. It was challenging for me. And I had to make a choice. Was I going to sit in that discomfort and be able to pursue what I want within the discomfort, or was I going to cave? Because it was really easy not to do it. It was extremely difficult to do it. But the fruit that came from it and the decision in that. Now, here's the caveat to here what I want to leave you with today. And I hope this gives some sort of value to somebody that's listening to this, because you may be in this moment in time right now. And if you're not in this moment, you will have this moment come up for you. Or maybe you can reflect on what are your moments of decision. These decisive, clear moments that really shape and sculpt your future. I know with 100%, well, I can't say with 100% certainty. I know with 99% certainty that Urban Young would not exist today if I didn't go to that conference. Because Rod would not have stayed in the business. And the reason he came back to the business was because I stayed in the business. Because I went to the conference. Because I was a good workout partner. He needed to see me do it on my own for him to have the belief that it was worth it for him. So he ended up coming back to the business. And if I would not have gone to that conference, he would have not come back to the business. I would not have come back to the business. We wouldn't be business partners today, and Urban Young would not exist. Now, think about the profound impact of what that has. I get goosebumps sitting here because there's just these moments in life that are going to be tossed at you where you are either going to bend or you are going to break. And everything is going to tell you it's okay. Because the world and everybody around you that's normal is going to say, well, that's unreasonable for you to keep doing that. Or it's reasonable for you to quit. Or you didn't really quit. Or, hey, it's justified. Because normal people justify stuff. Extraordinary people do not justify stuff. They push. They make a decision on where they're going, and then they figure it out. There are no excuses. There are only reasons. Instead of saying, I couldn't go to that conference because, man, I didn't have any money, the answer is I had to go to the conference because I didn't have any money. I don't have a ride. I can't go. You got to go. You can't even afford a ride there. You can't even afford a ride there. You're obviously not developed enough because you would have been more successful to be able to get there. So what's the only way to become more developed so you don't run into this problem again? It's to go to the conference. Sitting at home on your couch is not going to get you closer to your dreams. So I'll leave you with this, and I hope this ponders some thought for you, and I hope it helps someone. When the next moment comes and you're challenged with these situations that have these tremendous amounts of friction on them, ask yourself the question. I come back to decisions. Does this decision get me closer or farther away from my dream? If you're doing a business or you're in a project right now and you know you're not going to be able to have success, continuing to go down that road isn't getting you closer to your dream. You're delaying the next opportunity. But if you're in something that you know you can be successful in, it's just difficult right now and you're just not good enough, then is going to the epicenter to get more knowledge and information and more skills and more mentorship and more relationship, is that going to help you get better and get closer to your dream? Probably yes. Even if you can't afford it. Even if it puts stress on maybe some relationships in your life. Even if there are the people in your life you care about the most that don't support necessarily what you're doing. They support you. They love you, but they just don't necessarily support what you're doing. I relate to that, man. I relate to that. There were 3 people in my life that supported me starting Urban Young. It is my wife, without any doubt. That is my number 1 support system. She is the biggest believer in me and always has been. Number 2 is Mr. Rod Erb. He has been my workout partner for 15 plus years and an incredible friend. And number 3 is my little brother and my business partner and one of my other best friends who believes in me sometimes way more than I believe in myself. But I didn't have this huge support system to make these choices and the decisions. I had these philosophies that were input that someone gave me. They were gifts of gold. And then they held me accountable to live my life in accordance with those philosophies. What good is it to have these ideologies and these philosophies that help us make better decisions, but when we're faced with the decision of where we can use that philosophy, we don't use it? We fall back to the ones that are easy. If you're going to adopt good philosophy, you have to be willing to hold the line on it. And usually that will come in the day of decision. Usually that will come in these moments of decision for your career, for your life, and for your business, where you can go left or you can go right. So I encourage you guys to take the right road and take the tough road, because the tough road is always more fruitful. I appreciate you guys listening today. If this rings a bell to you, then you are on the path. I don't have met a successful person yet that doesn't have one of these stories. So I wish you nothing but incredible toughness and friction and challenge in your journey. And I wish that you have many of these stories so you can triumph and overcome them and be better equipped to help the person behind you who's going to go through the same thing. So with that, I appreciate you guys. Have an amazing day. Life is meant to be extraordinary. Let's leave the ordinary for the ordinary. All right, guys. Bye-bye for now.